David Reynolds had always been the kind of man who knew when to pick his battles. He had learned, through years of experience, that not every fight was worth the energy, that some conflicts resolved themselves over time, and that sometimes people were simply too stubborn, too small-minded to change. But there was one thing he would never compromise on, never let slide, never back down from, no matter what. And that was his daughter, Sophie, at just 12 years old. Sophie had already been through more than most adults could imagine. Hospital stays, surgeries, endless tests, medications, more tests, more hospitals, more waiting rooms, all because of a neurological condition that made everyday tasks feel like climbing mountains. And yet, despite it all, she had learned to move through life with a quiet resilience, a determination that inspired everyone around her. But no matter how strong she was, there were things she would always need help with. That's where Milo came in. Milo wasn't just a dog. He was Sophie's lifeline. A golden retriever trained from the time he was a tiny puppy, learning to assist her in ways no ordinary pet could. He could sense an oncoming medical episode before she even knew it was happening. He kept her calm when the world became too much, guided her away from danger, fetched her medication, and applied gentle pressure when she needed grounding. Milo didn't just make life easier for Sophie. He made it possible. So, when David moved to Oakwood Ridge, he did his homework. He combed through every local, state, and federal law protecting service animals, making sure there would be no issues, no arguments, no loopholes for anyone to exploit. He thought that would be enough. He thought wrong. The first time he met Karen Mathers, he knew exactly what kind of person she was. Everything about her screamed control. Rigid posture, clipboard clutched tightly in one hand. A smile stretched so thin across her face it barely qualified as one. She carried herself with an air of force authority, the kind people wield when they've never held real power but desperately crave it. "Mr. Reynolds," she greeted, stepping onto his driveway, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. "Welcome to Oakwood Ridge." David wiped the sweat from his forehead, having spent the better part of the day hauling boxes inside. "Thanks. I'm Karen Mathers, the HOA president," she said, as if the title alone should mean something to him, as if he should be impressed. David just nodded. "All right." Karen's gaze flickered past him, landing on the porch. Sophie sat there, Milo pressed against her side, his bright blue service vest in clear view. The moment Karen saw him, her expression stiffened just slightly, but David caught it. "Oh," she said, her tone dipping from polite curiosity to something closer to distaste. "You have a pet?" David's jaw tightened. "He's not a pet," he said evenly. "Milo is Sophie's service dog." Karen's smile didn't falter, but it thinned. "I see," she said, though it was obvious she didn't. David could tell what was coming next, so he braced himself. "Right on cue. I should mention," Karen said, "that Oakwood Ridge has a very strict pet policy. We only allow dogs under 25 pounds, and only in specific areas. No exceptions." David took a slow breath. "Well," he said, keeping his voice steady, "Milo isn't a pet. He's a federally recognized service animal. The ADA states he's allowed anywhere my daughter goes. No exceptions." Karen's expression remained unchanged, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Well, of course," she said, her voice sugary sweet, the tone people used when they were barely tolerating someone's existence. "But I do think it's only fair to inform the community. Some people have allergies. Some people are afraid of large dogs." David's patience was thinning fast. "He's well trained. He's not a threat." Karen tilted her head, still eyeing Milo like he was a problem to be solved. "Well," she finally said, closing her clipboard, "I'm sure you'll do your best to be mindful of the rules." With that, she turned and walked away. David stood there, watching her retreat, his teeth clenched so hard his jaw ached. He had wanted this move to be a fresh start, for Sophie's sake. But now, standing there on his own driveway, he could already feel it. This wasn't over. Karen wasn't done. Not even close. The next morning, the first complaint appeared in his mailbox. "Community reminder. Oakwood Ridge upholds strict regulations regarding pets in common areas. All residents are expected to respect these policies and ensure compliance. Failure to do so may result in fines or further action. David crumpled the paper in his fist. It was written as a general notice, but he knew exactly who it was meant for. He ignored it. Then came the second letter, and the third, each one more pointed, more aggressive than the last. Concerns have been raised regarding an unauthorized animal in the neighborhood. Residents are reminded that all dogs must be leashed in designated areas only. David didn't need to guess who was filing the complaints. Karen wasn't just making it clear she didn't want Milo around. She was actively trying to make life impossible for them. And the worst part? Sophie noticed. One afternoon, as he helped her with her homework, she finally asked, her voice small and hesitant, "Dad, is someone mad about Milo?" David set his pencil down and turned to her. "Why do you ask?" She bit her lip, looking down. "Because the lady with the clipboard keeps looking at us. And I heard her tell someone that big dogs don't belong here." David's hands curled into fists. He forced himself to breathe, to stay calm. "Listen to me," he said firmly, making sure she was looking at him. "You haven't done anything wrong. Milo belongs here. No one can change that." Sophie nodded, but David could tell she wasn't fully convinced. And that made his blood boil. Because now, it wasn't just about Karen's ridiculous power trip. Now, she was making his daughter feel unsafe in her own home. And that was something he would never allow. Not now. Not ever. Karen wanted a fight? She was about to get one. Wait for part 2.